for daily Ask Reddit. r/Ask Reddit. Workers who got their bosses fired. How? If you like the video, drop a like and subscribe so you never miss a video. I used to work at a title company and witnessed our department manager forge mortgage documents on a fairly regular basis. So when she went to upper management to throw the entire department under the bus for being behind on recording documents, I marched straight 2 hours to resign and let them know what she was doing. She was fired and they called me and offered my job back before the week was out. Did you accept it to go back? I did. It was a better environment for a while, but then it got bad again. I moved on and work in healthcare now, and I'm much happier. Worked register at a tour company. I also had a manager who ducking hated me for some reason. She was probably the bitchiest person I've ever met. Constantly yelled at us for not reason. Got onto me about answering questions a new hire had when I was asked. Not her. Wrote down I was 30 minutes late for a shift when I was 2 minutes late, etc etc. We had a sneaking suspicion that she was taking money from our tills, as she was always the one who counted down the till when someone got fired for stealing cash. I made it a habit to count down every bill when I gave it back to a customer because we would get paid docked if we were even $1 off. So if a customer had $23 in change, I'd count 20, 1, 2, 3 in front of them, so I knew I'd given back the right amount. We also had cameras pouring at the registers. Well, one day my GM pulls me aside and says $20 was missing from my till and they were going to fire me. I straight up told my boss she could look at the cameras because I counted out all my bills for customers. Lo and behold, bitchy bitch was the one who counted down my till and got caught on tape pocketing the money. She was gone by my next shift. Duck you, Jennifer. I won. I had a job that required my supervisor to be doing evaluations of my cases and charts. She just hadn't in months. She and my director ordered me and my co-workers to do our own chart audits, fill out the forms, and they would sign off. I was so tired of not having adequate supervision. Staff meetings weekly where she yelled at us and invariably someone cried due to the stress and lack of support and not having been paid enough to do everything I was doing in their job. I refused. I was told to do it or I would be fired. Nope. So I got fired. On the way out to my car, I called my former director who had moved to another agency. She set up an interview for the next day and I had a new job within 24 hours. She asked me what had happened at that interview. I spilled all the tea. Her sister-in-law was on the board of the previous agency, so she called her and I told her everything too. Director was fired and supervisor was reprimanded and put on close monitoring. She had killed any chance of promotion and left shortly afterwards, I heard. I was just happy to have jumped ship from that toxic mess. I should have left months earlier. I had a boss who was skimming off employee hours at Walmart. I took screenshots of my employees' hours on Thursday before the shift started and then screenshots of their hours on Friday that showed that all of them had a couple hours skimmed off their work week. I was a low-level manager, he was an upper-tier manager. He got fired. I believe his motivations was that he wanted to get promoted and wanted to show that he could get more done in less man hours. Probably would have impacted his bonus too. Not my story but my mother's. I watched on the sidelines as a teenager. My mother's job was basically a professional fundraiser. I really don't know what else to call it. People came to her for help raise money for non-profits or other foundations that needed it. This was a long time ago before social workers were more of a mandatory thing at high schools. My high school was very poor and did not have one. So my mother took it upon herself to set up a fundraiser to pay the salary of a social worker so my high school could have won. After raising all the money, she went to talk to the principal, who flat out refused to take any of it and said the position just wasn't necessary. My mother was pretty upset and just decided she would donate the money to supplies or something like that. I honestly have no idea what she did with it, but it did go to some sort of charity. After a few months, at a Christmas party, the superintendent of all the public schools in the area was at the same party, and he struck up a conversation with my mother. After some small talk, my mother said that it was such a shame that principal didn't take the money for the social worker's position. The superintendent was dumbstruck and then told her that he had ordered principal to find funding for that position, and when superintendent asked him about it he replied with, "No one is interested in that and we just couldn't get the money for it." Needless to say he lost his position, and whenever we came back from the holiday break the school was hiring for his position. Management was giving an injured, not wanting to pay him, accusing him of gold bricking. Workers said, "Tell you what, do the right thing here, or you will be sorry." Management said take your best shot. Worker called the EPA and APCD, told them where to find the logs that showed discrepancies in toxic material storage and usage. Sheriff's deputies showed up and raided the offices. Field supervisors from 10 years ago that had retired got subpoenaed. It was epic. Cost the company massively in fines and remediation. All because you wanted to f with one poor bastard. Edit. Since there may be some question around how all of this could happen in the age of electronic reporting, here's a story. It's not all the story of course. The news never does quite get all the story. Since it's in the LA Times I'm not worried about privacy. However, it was a state agency that was caught, the EPA became involved later, and at another site. It's been a few years and the chronology of events gets recalled incorrectly sometimes. Once you appear on a regulator's radar, you better have your shite tight. I used math to prove to their superior how severely my boss had underestimated turnover 3+ years in a row, costing a ton of money and labor issues. One day earlier the boss had screamed at my team until his face went purple, making a huge spectacle in front of the entire floor. The gist was that we were colluding against the company by a handful of us, electing not to renew our contracts. Came back with graphs and maths, baby. He was demoted and transferred out a couple weeks later. Pro tip, don't make a grumpy scapegoat out of someone who loves to make Excel graphs. He was always slacking off. He'd go and do a 15-minute task and be gone 2 hours. He'd have to shoot off early for a doctor's appointment or a dentist appointment, always with no prior warning, and whenever he was obviously bored. This was, mind you, within weeks of the new shop opening and all of us being hired. I was young and went along with it for a while. My colleague was in her 40s and vaguely knew him anyway, so was not standing for it. She reported him repeatedly to our area manager, who decided to come down to speak to him about it. AM rung in the morning, told him to stay in the shop today and send one of us out for anything that needed doing. He said he had something to do, but his boss said nope, need you in the shop. Somehow he didn't get the obvious message and went out anyway. The AM came down and he was gone. My manager wouldn't answer his phone all day. AM was pissed. At the end of the day, when we were closing up, he walked past, posted his keys through the door, and I never saw him again. Didn't even attempt to argue his case.